I'm a 19-year-old woman living by myself in a small apartment on the edge of a quiet town. My only roommate is my little dog, Max. He's a tiny, fluffy ball of energy, and honestly, he's the best company I could ask for. My place is about 10 miles from the main part of town, which means things can get pretty quiet, especially at night. Because I live a bit far out, getting food delivered is sometimes a challenge. The drivers don't always want to make the trip, but I still order delivery when I'm too tired to cook. I never really worried about it before. I figured as long as I kept my doors locked and stayed aware, I'd be fine. This story happened on a Friday evening. I'd spent most of the day cleaning up my apartment. My boyfriend and I are in a long-distance relationship, and he usually visits on weekends. So I like to make sure everything looks nice before he arrives. After a couple of hours of cleaning, I realized I was starving. The kitchen was spotless, and I didn't want to mess it up right after cleaning. I picked a burger place I hadn't tried before and placed my order. The app told me my driver was named Kevin, and he'd be arriving in a silver Toyota. I set the delivery instructions to leave the food at my door. I always do contactless delivery, just to be safe. While I waited, I watched TV and tried to unwind. After about half an hour, I got a notification saying my food had been delivered. I was pretty hungry by then, so I jumped up right away and went to the door. But when I opened it, there was nothing there. I looked around, checked the hallway, and even peeked at my neighbor's doors, but there was no sign of my order. I was about to message the driver when there was a knock. It was my neighbor, Mr. Hill, holding my bag of food. He told me he saw the delivery driver standing outside my window, peering inside, and it made him uncomfortable. The food from the driver himself, just to be safe. I thanked him and tried to brush off the weird feeling. I went back inside, ate my food, and watched a movie to relax. I tried not to think too much about it. Later that night, I started getting ready for bed. I took a shower, locked all the doors, and made sure Max had food and water. As I was settling in, Max started growling at the window. He's usually pretty calm, so it caught me off guard. I looked outside but didn't see anything, so I tried to ignore it. A little while later, I heard a loud bang on my bedroom window. Max started barking like crazy. I froze, not sure what to do. I pulled the covers up to my chin and stared at the window, my heart pounding. I grabbed my phone and called the police, whispering so whoever was outside wouldn't hear me. I told the dispatcher that someone was in my backyard and that my window didn't lock properly. She told me to go to another room and wait for the officers to arrive. I hurried to the kitchen, grabbed a kitchen knife just in case, and tried to stay calm. It felt like forever, but eventually I saw the flashing lights outside. The police arrived and started looking around my apartment and the field across the street. One officer stayed with me while the others searched the area. They found muddy footprints outside my bedroom window. It had rained earlier that day, so the ground was soft. The officers checked the field and found the silver Toyota from earlier, parked with its lights off. But the driver wasn't inside. My neighbor, Mr. Hill, came outside to see what was happening. He told the officers about what he saw earlier with the delivery driver. The officers took his statement and then suggested I stay somewhere else for the night, just to be safe. Mr. Hill offered his couch, but I decided to stay in my own place. I locked every door and window as best as I could and tried to get some sleep. I barely slept that night. Every little sound made me jump. Max was restless too, pacing around and growling at the door. Around 2 in the morning, there was a loud knock at my front door. I almost didn't answer, but then I heard someone say, "Police." She told me they had stayed nearby in case the person came back, and he did. They caught the delivery driver trying to get into my apartment. He was arrested right there. The officer reassured me that I was safe now, but I was still shaken up after that night. I stopped using food delivery apps when I was home alone. To my doors, Max got a few extra treats for being such a good watchdog. A few years back, I was working a second job as a rideshare driver. I usually picked up late-night shifts, especially on weekends when the bars closed and people needed a safe ride home. Most nights were uneventful, just driving folks from place to place, but this particular Saturday was different. It was around 3 in the morning. I got a request from someone across town, so I headed over to the pickup spot, which turned out to be a quiet street corner. A man got in. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with long hair tied back and a small tattoo on his neck. I tried to greet him, but he just gave a short reply and didn't seem interested in talking. That wasn't unusual. Not everyone wants to chat during a late-night ride. I double-checked the address he'd entered, which was a house on the other side of town. He nodded, so I started driving. A minute into the ride, he suddenly got tense and accused me of taking a longer route on purpose. I explained that I was just following the directions from the app, and after a moment, he seemed to relax. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you ever think about how lucky you are?" I wasn't sure what he meant, so I asked him to explain. He looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "I mean, do you appreciate your life?" That question put me on edge. I told him I was grateful for my life and my family every day. He went quiet after that, mumbling to himself so softly I couldn't tell if he was talking to me or not. When I asked if he needed anything, he just told me to keep driving. After a while, I asked if he was headed home, and he said he had something to finish. I didn't want to ask any more questions, so I just focused on getting him to his destination. We eventually arrived at a street I didn't recognize, in a part of town I rarely visited. The houses looked worn down, and the area felt deserted. He asked me to wait for him while he ran inside. I hesitated, unsure if he needed a ride back or not. He said he'd only be a minute, but the way he said it made me uneasy. He got out of the car and walked toward the back of the house instead of the front door. I sat there for a few seconds, debating what to do. My gut told me not to stick around, so I quietly drove away, trying not to draw attention. That ride shook me up, and I decided to end my shift early. I went home and tried to put it out of my mind, but I couldn't shake the bad feeling the next day. 2 people had been found, shot in their home. As the segment went on, they showed a photo of the suspect, and it was the same man I'd picked up the night before. He'd been caught nearby after neighbors heard the gunshots and called the police. The news said it was likely related to gang activity. Ever since that night, I've struggled with a heavy feeling of guilt. I know people say it wasn't my fault, that if I hadn't driven him, someone else would have. But I can't help but wonder if there was something I could have done, some sign I should have noticed. It's something I still think about, even now. It was a Friday in December, one of those bitterly cold nights when the streets are nearly empty. I was 19 at the time, driving a car my parents had helped me buy. I was pretty skinny back then, and my dad always reminded me to keep something for self-defense in the car just in case. That night, I was bored and decided to log in for a few late-night rides. Not long after, I got a request from someone named Tom, just a couple miles away at a shopping center. When I arrived, I noticed a group of teenagers hanging around the lot. I hoped my passenger wasn't part of that crowd. Parking lot twice, trying to spot my rider, until I finally saw a man approaching from behind. I rolled down my window and called out his name. After a few awkward exchanges, he finally got in, choosing the seat directly behind me, which always made me uneasy. Most people sat diagonally, but not this guy. Tom looked to be in his late 40s, and the smell of cigarettes filled the car. As soon as he got in, he gave me an address about 10 miles away. I tried to make small talk, but he barely responded, mumbling or giving short, dry answers. After a while, he just ignored me completely. As we drove, I started to get a strange feeling. I was too nervous to look in the rear-view mirror, but when I finally glanced up, I saw him staring right at me. My heart started racing. I pressed the gas a little harder, wanting the ride to end as quickly as possible. Around the 8th mile, I realized we were far from the city, just woods and the occasional dark building on either side. I checked the map, and the address he gave me led to a dead-end street with nothing else nearby. My nerves were on edge. I asked if the address was his home, and after a long pause, he finally said yes. Less than a mile to go, and I saw nothing but darkness ahead. When we reached the street, I slowed down, hoping to see a house or some sign of life, but there was nothing, just empty woods. I pretended to miss the turn, hoping he wouldn't notice, but he did. He suddenly shouted at me to turn around. My hands shook as I apologized and made a quick 3-point turn. As I headed back, I quietly reached for the small blade I kept in the side compartment, just in case. We pulled up to the dead-end road, my headlights illuminating nothing but trees. I stopped at the end, bracing myself for whatever might happen. Tom finally spoke, his voice softer than before, and thanked me for the ride. He opened his door, but before getting out, he asked if I could help him carry his bag, claiming he had a bad back. The thing is, he didn't have a bag. He hadn't brought anything with him. Trying to keep my voice steady, I told him to let himself out and I'd help in a second. Suddenly, I felt pressure around my neck. He was choking me from behind. Instinct took over. I grabbed the blade and jabbed it into his arm. He let go, screaming, and tumbled out of the car. I didn't wait for anything else. I hit the gas and sped back to the main road, my heart pounding the whole way. I never called the police. I was too shaken, and all I wanted was to get home and forget the whole thing.